Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Before starting my video, if you didn't subscribe my channel yet, please do, and do not forget turn on notifications because I'm here every day for you. Alright, let's continue where we left. Previous lesson we finalized code first approach and we created our first and second migration. Now we're going to create our generics. Alright, but before starting coding, I will do some explanation. Let me open my board. Okay. Let's say this is our database. Okay. And we just imagine we just put here a door. Let's call this DB context. Okay. And we add our configurations. And with these configurations, using this DB context, we add our migrations into our database. Now we need to manipulate database. To do that, we're going to create our methods. Let's type here repository methods, and we're able to manipulate database using repository methods through to DB context and let's say manipulations. Alright. And obviously our controllers will use these repository methods, and these repository methods make the manipulations. This is basic schema what we're going to build in this project. Alright, let's clear everything and close this section. Let's start creating our generics. Why I'm telling we are going to create generics? Because we're going to create CRUD operation methods and they have to be for all entities. So in these circumstances we have 6 entities, and should we supposed to create 6 different method classes? No, obviously. So we're going to create a generic one, and we're going to give these generic methods to our entity name, so we're able to make manipulation. Let's start coding, you will understand better. Alright, oh no, class, sorry. First of all, we need to create a folder. Let's say generic repositories. Alright. In the beginning of this playlist, I told you we're going to use advanced level of fundamentals of what we learned our previous lessons. Now we're going to use generics and polymorphism in this section. Alright, let's add a class. Actually, it is going to be an interface. Generic repository. Alright. Alright, let's define what kind of data we need. First of all, let's make it a generic. So we need to give a entity. This is going to work like this. Let me show you. So once we call our generic repository, okay, all we need to do is generic repository. For example, if we work with products, then we're able to use these methods located in generic repository for product object. Alright, this is just an example. Let's create our methods. The first one is get all methods, and the return type is going to be iCoreable. Why I'm using iCoreable? Because I can add another logic to this get all methods. Okay, that's why I'm using iCureable. and let's say get all method. So what is the problem here right now? iQueryable entity. Did I something wrong here? iQueryable entity gets all. Oh, this is class. What is this is the problem. Let's turn it to the interface. Now it's okay. All right, let's get back to iQueryable. iQueryable helps us to create query to send our database. Okay, when it comes to the service layer and controllers, I will be explain much more. How can I say deeply this iQueryable. Let's continue for now. Void create item. This is create item, update item, and delete item. But we need to give the objects, which is create item t entity. Let's say request for update item, same as we need to give t entity, and delete item. I'm just thinking, should we give t entity as well? Let's continue with t entity. If something came up different, we can change it later. All right, let's find just one item to do that. The return type is going to be t entity get item, and we're going to send integer id. All right. Show potential fixes. Let's see what kind of fix we have. No, nothing. All right, leave it like that. Okay, let's save it. Let's create the class of this interface. Add new class, generic repository. All right, let's inheritance from I generic repository, and of course we need to define t entity here as well. Let's give this t entity here. As you can see, there are red line underneath of I generic repository. Let's have a look. What is this? As you can see, we need to implement our interfaces. Control dot and implement interface. Here we go. These are our methods. Now we are going to fill these methods. Why we are using interfaces and classes? Just imagine for the future, okay, for the future, if you would like to change the body of methods, you can just create another class. For example, let's type here add new class I generic new repository. Sorry, not I, just generic new repository. Okay, implement our I generic repository again. Let's use t entity and t entity. All right, let's implement our interface again. Here we go. We can change our methods, not deleting the previous ones. All we need to do, we change the registration in our program CS file. That's all what we need. Okay, let's delete this one just for now. I'm going to show you for the future time, maybe how can I say, to explain you much more better. Okay, let's fill the generic repository first. But what we need here, we need our door db context. Okay, let's bring it here. Private read only sorry, custom db context, custom context. Yeah, custom context. All right. Let's generate our constructor. Here we go. So we add our custom context into our sorry, we are receiving our custom context from our service container. So let's get back our extension methods. In this section, we add our addDB context in our services. All right, gets back our generic repository. Perfect. Let's start with our queryable section. Let me have a look quickly. Let's type here y var items equal custom context dot. We're going to use a set method, which is for t entity as queryable. We're going to leave it as queryable and as no tracking. Why we couldn't add as no tracking? Okay, we have an error here as well. Let's see the error. Why we get here? Must be a reference type. Alright, t entity must be reference type. Yeah, we forget to add restriction to our generic type here. Let's add where t entity must be a class. Okay, and let's go generic repository. Let's add it here as well. Perfect. Let's get back here. Perfect. Now we have no problem adding, receiving all item list. Let's try to add as no tracking as well. Yep, here we go. So what it means, if we receive all items, I'm going to leave it as queryable and I'm going to use as no tracking because I'm not going to waste my resources tracking every item which called by the client or user. Okay. When we came to the service section, you're going to understand much more why we are using as queryable and as not tracking as well. Let's return items. Before continue, I'm going to make a small refactor. I'm not gonna. Um, I don't want to use these custom context dot set the entity blah blah all the time. I'm going to create a db set class here, which is the entity. All right, let's add db set here, and I'm going to define this db set using custom context dot set t entity. So all I need to do use this db set in my project. It is much more easy to use according to me. It's up to you. You can use whatever you want. All right, let's continue. Get just one item. By the way, I'm going to change the name by ID. It's better name. Let's copy and paste here. Get item by ID. It's perfect. Okay, let's close this one. Let's go back. Perfect. All right, let's save our item. db set find ID. This is easy. We're going to use just find method to return the specific item. All right, let's continue with create. So the return, there is no return value. This is a void. So directly call our db set and let's say is that create or add? Yeah, we have add here, add request. After we add our data to our database, we need to save our changes. db set dot save. Where is the save changes? It's interesting why I couldn't get the save changes. No, it is not in the db set, it is in our custom context. It is my fault because db set has entity. once we manipulate our entity, we're going to go custom context and save changes here. Perfect. Let's go to update dbset dot update request. Let's go to custom context and save changes. Oops, not you. Perfect. Update is completed. Now let's go through with delete. dbset. This is the remove, I guess. Yeah, remove request and save changes one more time. Perfect. It's all working. We finalized our generic repository. KD, perfect. Let's collapse all definitions. Alright, I'm always keeping my classes like this. I will able to see, I should able to see the constructor and just method signatures like this. If it's needed, you can open your, you can uncollapse your method and you can see the body. Alright. Perfect, we finalized our generic repository. Now I'm going to create a generic service. Why I'm creating another services? Because this class is just only for manipulating database. So we can't add logic. You can add obviously, but you shouldn't add your logics here. So to add your logic, we're going to use our services. According to solid principle, we are following this route. Services. Oops, it's the wrong section. Let's remove it. Right click on your assemble, add folder services. Okay, let's add class I generic services in real and bigger project. I'm not I'm not using generic services, but when it comes to the small project, you can use it. It's really useful and it is a way of saving time. Generic services or service. Our generic service. Let's make it interface. And we're going to give a T entity and this T entity must be a class. Let's create another class, generic service T entity. Inheritance from I generic service T entity word T entity is a class. Alright, let's get back our I generic service interface and define our methods. I'm going to copy from my repository and then I'm going to change the return types. Let's come here. Here we go. Now we're going to change the return types. Let's make it I list. Let's leave the create update as it is. Change to delete integer ID because we need to send an ID to find out the item which is need to be deleted, and the entity is okay. But before adding implementation of our generic service, I would like to make a small changes in my generic repository because we're going to use include methods. Alright, let's continue like this. When we get error message, I'm gonna do refactoring. Let's continue with our generic service section. Let's implement our interface. And we need to add our generic service now, generic repository, private read only I generic repository, which is going to be for T entity repository. Let's create our constructor. Perfect. Now we're going to use this repository variable to manipulate our data. Now we're going to add our logics here and business here. Let's start with the create repository, create item. Let's have a look. Create item. Why I couldn't catch this? Create item, as you can see, comes from generic repository interface and requesting a T entity class. Here we go. All done. Let's continue with delete. Repository dot delete item. Let's open your parentheses. It is requests a T entity. So we need to find which entity is supposed to be deleted. To do that, var item repository dot get item by ID, and we're going to give the ID variable. Now we have T entity type of item. Let's give this item to our delete item method, and it's deleted. Perfect. Let's continue update repository dot update item request. All done. Let's continue T entity get item by ID repository dot get item by ID, and it is requesting an ID. Let's give it, and we need to return the result. Perfect. This is get item by ID service. Let's continue with list section. Actually, we're going to change this one as well too, because we're going to use we're going to refactor these two methods. We're going to use include. Okay, let's remove this section. Start with get all first. I'm trying to tell you in this section, let's get back our entity first. If we would like to make a list of all products, we have a category and product feature classes as well here. So we need to include these classes in this product class. Same as for category. If we call a category, we need the list of products of this category. So we need to use include methods to bring these products into this category. To do that, we will use include method, but this is a generic service, so we have a problem here. So what can we do? Let me show you the problem first, then I will show you the how we able to resolve this problem. For items equal repository get all. Perfect. All we need to do use include, right? Let's call include method, but we need to call the property using an linQ. But when I type this linQ method, there is no property here because this is using T entity. So T entity, we don't know what the T entity is. Is that product or is that category? Is that user? So that's why we couldn't catch the property here. So we need to create much more generic methods here. To do that, let's get back to our generic service and let's add here an expression using params keyword expression func delegate, and I'm going to give a T entity and the return value will be object, and it can be an array. That's why I'm adding params beginning of my get all include properties. Perfect. So my get all method requires linq method. Let's get back our generic service now. Let's delete this include. Okay. Let's fix the method signature. Let's copy this signature section and let's edit here. Perfect. All right. Now we're going to check this include properties is null or not. Okay. If include properties, if it's not null, is not null, all right. We're going to touch all properties using for each, okay? Then we're going to change our items. Here we go. Items dot using include item. So what I've done here. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna change the item with the property. Okay. Perfect. So this is our queryable entity, right? So we have here, for example, let's say we are using product. Queryable, I, Q, how is written queryable? Alright, so we have our queryable product here. Perfect, right? Then we're going to check if we add some objects, some properties here. For example, let's say we use get all, okay? Let's say categories and product features. So what's gonna happen now? We have two included properties, categories and product features. We're going to use for each, and the first one is going to be get all include properties. All right. Then we're going to include the other one, include product features. Actually, the first one include the properties, and second one. So we have items here, right? Items change with the include properties. The second one will be like this. Include properties and include product features. So the result item query will be get all include properties, include product features. Then we're going to move forward. var sorry, not var, return item dot to list. Why we are returning list? Because the return type is list. Perfect. This is how it is working exactly if you would like to add properties in a generic methods. Hopefully you understand what I'm trying to do this here. When it comes to get item by ID, I'm going to use the normal way for now. If it's needed for the future time, we will come back again and we can refactor it. Alright, let's say var item repository get item by ID, which is come from our iGeneric repository, and requested an ID parameter. And perfect. return is item. Perfect. We finalized our generic service as well. Let's collapse all definitions. Let's open our constructor. Perfect. We have create item, delete item, update item, get item by ID, and get all method. As you can see, we created our generic repositories and generic services. Now, let's add these repositories to our program CS file. Normally, we add here, but as you can see, we have an extension method. So let's go back our extension method now. Let's add our interfaces and classes in our service container. To do that, service.addScope, and we're going to use type of, because these are generic methods. All right, I generic repository, comma, type of if I able to write, yep, generic repository. So it means, guys, if you remember our previous fundamental and basic lessons, I'm telling my service container, if you have a request generic repository type of class, you're going to give them a generic repository type of class. All right. So if you remember, I was trying to tell you, if you would like to change your generic repository with someone else, for example, generic new repository, all you need to do is change the name here, generic new repository. Then you will able to use new repositories. This is why we are using interfaces, classes, and service container. It is easy to update and expand your project. Alright, let's continue with the adding services. Generic service or services. Where is my generic service? Yeah, let's add our namespace. Perfect. Let's add service as well. Perfect. Now we add our services and repositories to our program CS file, I mean extensions. Perfect. Let's save them all. Now I'm going to finish this lesson here. Next lesson, probably I'm going to build our controllers and let's see the results step by step. Then we will going to, how can I say, expand our project small by small with new features. Alright guys, take care of yourself. See you on next lesson. Bye bye.